With a loud clang, the front door swung open violently. A brash woman barged into my home, her piercing voice echoing through the hall. "I can't believe someone like you stole my man. I'm 3 months pregnant with your husband's child. Get out of here now." Her sudden harsh words froze me in place. She claimed to be my husband's mistress and boldly declared her presence in my home. The flashy blonde woman had unnaturally bright lipstick and a twisted smile, speaking with a victorious tone. "Look at you. With that tacky outfit, it's no wonder he chose me over you." Her words hit like daggers as she laughed haughtily, her voice echoing in my mind. That laughter brought back memories of a painful time when I had lost confidence as a wife and a woman. Years ago, I had endured humiliation. My ex-husband's cold stares and people's mocking words lingered in my memory. I was overwhelmed by regret and confusion, my heart a whirlwind of complex emotions. Yet I knew that if I let her words defeat me, I would be unable to move forward. The blonde woman placed her hand on her stomach with a triumphant look, as if staking her claim. My chest tightened and I fought back the scream rising in my throat. Taking a deep breath, I steadied my trembling voice and slowly opened my mouth. "Excuse me," I began. "My name is Sarah. I'm 36 years old and the CEO of my company. I inherited a small business from my father in my mid-20s and have worked tirelessly to sustain it ever since. From the beginning, I faced immense pressure as a leader and during the isolation of my role. In those early days, I often cried in private, unable to connect with the senior executives who had worked under my father. Over time, I gradually earned the trust of my employees and finally felt a sense of belonging. I suppressed my personal life and emotions, dedicating myself solely to protecting the company. As a result, I had no romantic relationships or gossip-worthy tales, which worried those around me. Despite their concerns, I poured everything into my role as a businesswoman. Secretly, though, I longed for a happy family, something I had never experienced. My mother passed away when I was young, and my father, always busy, entrusted my care to my grandmother. Because of this, I rarely spent time with my father and grew up starved for parental affection. My father barely spoke to me, and his rare interactions felt distant and stern. Even as I grew older, our relationship remained cold, leaving me feeling frightened of him as a child. However, everything changed when my father fell ill unexpectedly. By the time we discovered his illness, it was too late. He passed away after 6 months of being bedridden. During those 6 months, despite his condition, we shared conversations that healed old wounds. "I'm truly sorry for making you feel lonely, Sarah. My only wish is for you to be happy." His words brought me immense joy, melting years of bitterness. The time spent caring for my father became a cherished memory, giving me the strength to move forward. After my father's passing, I poured myself into managing the company he had built, determined to fulfill his dream for my happiness. Then one day, Tom entered my life as a new hire at the company. His cheerful demeanor and calming presence quickly endeared him to everyone around him. At first, he didn't realize I was the CEO, addressing me casually. "Oh, I didn't know you were the boss. Sorry about that." "It's fine," I replied with a smile. "Please, don't change the way you talk to me." His genuine laughter and easygoing personality brought a sense of lightness into my life, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Over time, we grew closer, and Tom became a source of comfort. "Sarah, you always seem so tense. Let me be the person who helps you relax." His sincerity stirred something in me, and I began to think, maybe I can have the warm, happy family I've always dreamed of. However, not everyone around me was supportive of our relationship. "Sarah, are you sure about this? Marrying Tom might not be the best decision." Against their advice, I married him, believing I had finally found happiness. But it wasn't long before cracks in our relationship began to show. One day, an envelope addressed to Tom arrived at the office. The sender was a woman whose name I didn't recognize. A sense of unease crept into my chest as I handed it to him that evening. "Tom, this letter was addressed to you at the office. Do you know who it's from?" He hesitated for a moment, his expression briefly startled before he dismissed my concerns. "Oh, it's nothing. Probably a misunderstanding from a hostess I met once. Don't worry about it." He tore up the letter in front of me, and although I wanted to believe him, doubt lingered. Over time, unsettling incidents began to occur, anonymous messages, a woman waiting outside the office, and whispers among staff. One evening, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. Standing at the door was a young blonde woman with a smug expression. "Open the door. We need to talk." Her demeaning tone made me hesitate, but eventually I unlatched the chain and opened the door partially. What's taking so long? Let me in already. Against my better judgment, I allowed her into my home, hoping to avoid creating a scene in front of the neighbors. Once inside, she wasted no time asserting herself. I'm pregnant with Tom's child. You need to leave this house because I'm moving in. Her audacity left me momentarily speechless, but I composed myself and responded calmly. You've been deceived. Let me explain the truth to you. My words caught her off guard, and for the first time, she hesitated. What are you talking about? She asked, her voice laced with doubt. Tom and I divorced 2 years ago. This house belongs to me, and I have no connection to him anymore. Her face twisted in confusion and disbelief. That's not true. He told me you wouldn't give him a divorce, and that's why we couldn't be together. I sighed, realizing she had been fed the same lies I had once believed. If you don't believe me, here's his current address. Take it up with him. With that, she stormed out of my house, her confidence shattered. As the door closed behind her, silence filled the room. I collapsed onto the floor, tears streaming down my face. Not from anger, but from bittersweet relief. Sitting there on the floor, I thought back to my tumultuous marriage and the painful events that followed. After my divorce from Tom, I had worked tirelessly to rebuild my company and regain the trust of my employees. The betrayal I experienced had nearly broken me, but it also taught me the importance of resilience and self-worth. When the blonde woman appeared at my door, it felt like a ghost from my past had come back to haunt me. But this time, I refused to let it consume me. Over the next few weeks, I began receiving harassing messages and anonymous phone calls. One morning, my assistant approached me with a concerned look, holding her phone out. Sarah, the company's website is receiving negative reviews. I thought you should see this. On the screen were anonymous posts accusing me of discrimination and other baseless claims. My stomach churned as I read the words, but I knew I couldn't ignore the situation. I immediately contacted my lawyer and a public relations expert to address the defamatory comments and protect the company's reputation. Meanwhile, I noticed someone following me on my way home, a shadowy figure lingering just far enough to make me feel uneasy. My nights were sleepless, plagued by the fear of being watched or targeted again. Then one day, I received a thick envelope in the mail. Inside were pages upon pages of hateful accusations, many containing private information no stranger should know. A chill ran down my spine as I realized just how far this person was willing to go. I brought the evidence to my lawyer, who assured me that we would take every legal measure necessary to stop the harassment. As the situation escalated, I received an unexpected phone call from Emma's lawyer. Sarah, I believe we have information that might help you. Could you meet us at our office? Curious and hopeful, I agreed to the meeting and brought my own legal counsel with me. At the office, Emma greeted me with a warm but serious expression. Sarah, thank you for coming. I think it's time we work together to put an end to this once and for all. She began explaining how Tom's actions had confused to wreak havoc in her life as well. Even after he married me, Tom's infidelity didn't stop, and now I've discovered he's been involved in fraudulent schemes to pay off his debts. Emma laid out a series of documents detailing Tom's activities, including evidence of his collaboration with a blonde woman. It appears Tom and his woman have been targeting multiple victims in a marriage fraud scheme. My heart sank as I realized the extent of his deceit, but at the same time, I felt a renewed sense of determination. Together, Emma and I decided to file a lawsuit against Tom and his accomplice, seeking justice for ourselves and their other victims. As the case unfolded, more victims came forward, each with their own stories of betrayal and loss. The trial was long and grueling, but eventually the truth came to light. Tom is sentenced to 4 years in prison for fraud, and his accomplice will serve a suspended sentence with probation. Hearing the verdict, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. While justice had been served, I knew this wasn't just about punishing Tom. It was about reclaiming our lives and moving forward. In the weeks following the trial, I focused on rebuilding the company's image and restoring trust with our clients and employees. I also began holding regular open forums with my team, creating a culture of transparency and collaboration. One day, Emma invited me out for tea, and we reflected on how far we had come. If it weren't for everything we went through, I would have never met you. Strange how life works, isn't it? Her words made me smile, and for the first time in years, I felt genuinely at peace. As the months passed, the shadows of the past began to fade, replaced by a deep appreciation for the present. I dedicated myself to creating a company culture that prioritized not just success, but also the well-being of every employee. One day, a young employee approached me with an unexpected suggestion. "Sarah, why don't we hold a company retreat? It could be a great way to bring everyone together and reflect on how far we've come." Inspired by the idea, I arranged a retreat at a quiet seaside location, a nod to the peace I had found during my own trip to my father's hometown. During the retreat, I shared my story with my team, not as their CEO, but as someone who had faced adversity and come out stronger. Their response was overwhelming, with many expressing gratitude for my honesty and openness. Thank you for sharing this with us. It reminds me that even in tough times, there's always hope. These moments of connection reinforced my belief in the power of vulnerability and authenticity. Back in the office, the energy was palpable. Our team was united in a way it hadn't been before. Meanwhile, Emma and I stayed in touch, supporting each other as we continued to rebuild our lives. One day, she sent me a photo of her young child holding a sign that read, "Thank you, Aunt Sarah." Tears welled up as I realized how much we had both grown from the pain we endured. On the second anniversary of the trial, I visited the seaside town where my father was buried. Standing at his grave, I whispered, "Dad, I finally found my happiness. Thank you for always believing in me." The wind carried my words, and I felt his presence, as if he were smiling down at me. On my way back to the city, I reflected on everything I had learned, the value of resilience, the importance of trust, and the power of forgiveness. Life wasn't perfect, but it was real, and for the first time in years, I felt truly at peace. Back at the office, my employees greeted me warmly, their smiles reminding me of the community we had built together. "Welcome back, Sarah. We missed you." Their energy was infectious, and I felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Over the next few months, the company continued to thrive, and I found myself mentoring others who were navigating their own struggles. One of them, a young entrepreneur named Emily, reminded me of myself in my early days, full of dreams but unsure of our path. "Sarah, how do you stay strong when everything feels like it's falling apart?" "Strength isn't about never failing, Emily. It's about finding the courage to stand back up every time you do." Her determination reignited my own passion for building not just a successful business, but a legacy of resilience and integrity. As I walked through the bustling office one evening, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought me here. The challenges I faced, the pain I endured, and the lessons I learned had shaped me into the leader and person I was today. And for that, I was grateful. Married for 20 years, I had plenty of complaints, but I assumed that was normal for a long married couple. I thought we had a bond, like teammates under the same roof, even if it wasn't deep love. But apparently, I was the only one who thought that way. My husband, Ethan, pushed the care of his parents entirely onto me while secretly enjoying an affair for years. My mother-in-law, Gemma, neglected by her own son, relied solely on me. The stress I felt was immense. Why did everything fall on me? My own parents passed away without my husband even visiting them in the hospital. That was it. I'd had enough. When I finally snapped and said so, my mother-in-law paused briefly before returning to her usual sharp tone. "A crude and ugly daughter-in-law like you? Fine, let's cut ties. No inheritance for you." "That's fine by me. Stay well," I said. Without a glance back, I walked away from her protests. If this is what she wants, so be it. Who should take the primary responsibility when in-laws need care? In this era of gender equality, caregiving responsibilities still often fall on women. Parenting is a clear example, with men rarely taking parental leave. And caregiving for elderly parents follows the same pattern. My husband, claiming his job kept him too busy, left everything to me. Generational expectations also play a role. Older generations often assume daughters-in-law will handle caregiving. My name is Rebecca Tanner, and I'm 47. I've been grappling with the challenges of caring for my in-laws. My family consists of my husband, Ethan, our daughter, Sarah, and me. Sarah recently graduated from a community college and has just started living on her own. Being an only child, Sarah was particularly spoiled growing up, and even as an adult, she remains somewhat entitled. Despite her job being close enough to commute from home, Sarah insisted on living alone in a stylish, secure apartment with amenities. I rejected her extravagant demands, as they seemed unnecessary for someone just starting out. Realizing she wouldn't get her way with me, she turned to her father, Ethan, for support. Ethan had been uninvolved in parenting from the start, claiming he didn't know how to handle a girl. Even as Sarah grew up, Ethan remained hands-off. When Sarah broke curfew or stole money from my wallet, Ethan refused to scold her, fearing she might dislike him. This leniency led Sarah to take advantage of him, knowing he wouldn't set boundaries. By high school, Sarah's spending habits were out of control. She brought expensive makeup to school, prompting her teachers to call her out. Parenting is always challenging, but in my case, Ethan felt more like an obstacle than a partner. When Sarah moved out, the stress finally lessened. While her lifestyle was a financial strain, Ethan agreed to cover her expenses, so I reluctantly accepted it. Just as I thought I could regain some control over my life, news came that Ethan's father had broken his leg. Ethan's father was a strict and rigid man, unwilling to let others disrupt his routines. Even when Sarah was little, visiting his house during holidays was challenging due to his strict schedule. Meals, baths, and walks were all meticulously timed, and Sarah, being a child, couldn't keep up, which irritated him. After that experience, I refused to visit his house again. Ethan, who also disliked conforming to his father's rules, didn't protest. While Ethan's mother occasionally visited us out of loneliness, 50 years passed without any real interaction with his father. When Ethan's father got injured, I assumed his wife would care for him, so I didn't give it much thought. Ethan seemed to think the same. But then Ethan received a call from his father's, something that was highly unusual. Concerned, I watched Ethan repeatedly say, "I understand. I'll visit soon." When the call ended, Ethan turned to me with troubling news. "Mom's memory is getting bad. She can't properly take care of Dad." "Memory issues? What do you mean?" "She forgets where the medications and bandages are. She even forgets doctor's appointments. And she doesn't realize she's forgetting." I recalled watching a health program about memory loss. It said forgetting things isn't unusual, but being unable to recall them at all could indicate dementia. Ethan's mother had always been outspoken and sharp-witted, a gossip enthusiast who loved discussing celebrity news. Though I found her nosy and unpleasant, the possibility of her developing dementia made me feel sympathy for her. Ethan and I visited his parents the following weekend. The house was messier than I expected, and Ethan's mother was far from quiet or confused. She was talkative, irritable, and incoherent. Her erratic behavior was exhausting to follow. While aging naturally causes some forgetfulness, the sudden onset of these symptoms worried me. I thought if she is sick, we need to treat her with patience and understanding. But I quickly learned how naive that sentiment was. "So, you finally decided to show up, Rebecca. Took you long enough. You should have been here the day he got hurt." "Excuse me? I had no idea you were struggling." I had sent money as a gesture of support, so I didn't expect to be scolded. "A proper daughter-in-law takes care of her in-laws. But fine, you're here now. Start taking care of him properly from today." I was stunned by her demand and looked at Ethan, hoping for support. Ethan avoided my gaze, leaving me to deal with everything alone. Caregiving shouldn't automatically fall on the wife just because she's the wife. But Ethan's family held on to these outdated beliefs, and I felt trapped. My main concern wasn't Ethan's father's care, it was his mother's deteriorating state. A broken bone heals, but if she truly had dementia, the situation would only worsen. "I'll handle your father's care. Can you take your mother to see a doctor?" "What if she refuses? She might get upset." "Just tell her it's for a health checkup. Make something up if you have to." "But dementia isn't curable, right? What's the point?" "It's not about curing her, it's about slowing its progression and learning how to manage it." Ethan clearly didn't want the responsibility. I had no choice but to step in, enduring his mother's sharp tongue while managing his father's care. I adjusted my work schedule, visiting their home after my shifts. I cooked, cleaned, and organized the house while Ethan's mother constantly criticized my efforts. Ethan's father, thankfully, didn't demand much. His silence was a small relief in an otherwise overwhelming situation. Their house was 30 minutes away by car or nearly an hour via public transit. Ethan's father, once independent and stubborn, had grown increasingly frail after his injury. He also developed high blood pressure, something likely undiagnosed for years. Despite doctors' advice for better diet and rehabilitation, he was resistant to change. His inactivity led to muscle atrophy, worsening his condition. Over time, his mobility decreased, and he became almost entirely bedridden. This lack of independence caused tension between him and his wife, which she redirected at me. I started receiving home aid support 3 times a week to help with household tasks. Ethan's mother hated the idea of outsiders helping, claiming it made her look lazy. Her pride prevented her from accepting help, but she didn't want to do the work herself either. Ethan occasionally visited on weekends for grocery runs, and his mother doted on him like a perfect hostess. When I asked Ethan to visit more often, his response was dismissive. "What about my weekends? This is your job, not mine." "What about my weekends? Who decided this was my responsibility?" Ethan never offered thanks or even acknowledged the effort I was putting in. Months passed, and Ethan's father's condition deteriorated further. His lack of mobility and mental clarity worsened, and eventually he passed away. The caregiving I had juggled on top of my job came to an abrupt end. With Ethan's father gone, his mother became my sole responsibility. I realized his father had been a stabilizing force, keeping her verbal abuse somewhat in check. If you had taken better care of him, he would still be alive. It's your fault he's gone. I knew her accusations were baseless, but hearing them daily wore me down. Her forgetfulness worsened, especially regarding her belongings, which led to constant accusations of theft against me. When I confronted Ethan about her behavior, his response was infuriating. "She's sick. Don't take it personally." That's easy to say when you're not the one facing it every day. Meanwhile, Ethan spent his nights working late, which I discovered was a cover for his drinking and infidelity. The smell of perfume and lipstick stains on his shirts confirmed my suspicions. Despite his own failures, Ethan had the audacity to lecture me. "Be more patient with her. Smile more. Your attitude could make a difference." How dare he tell me to smile when he couldn't even lift a finger to help? Desperate to reduce my stress, I made subtle efforts to get his mother to a doctor. "You're so vibrant, Mom. Let's go for a walk near that lovely hospital garden." Eventually, I succeeded in getting her evaluated. The doctor confirmed early-stage dementia and gave us strategies to manage her condition. I took over her medication schedule, ensuring she didn't miss doses. To handle her care, I reduced my work hours, which my manager graciously accommodated. Despite the burden, my workplace remained my only solace. Balancing part-time work with caregiving became my new normal. My savings were drained by caregiving expenses, but at least my workplace was supportive. I tried discussing Ethan's mother's condition with him, urging him to spend more time with her. "This is a progressive disease. You'll regret not being there for her." Ethan's response was silence. Instead of engaging, he avoided the conversation entirely. One day I returned home from work to find Ethan's belongings gone. His clothes, laptop, and even the cash I had saved for emergencies had disappeared. Panicked, I called his office, only to learn he had taken a personal day. It was clear. He had left. The betrayal wasn't shocking. I had long suspected he might leave. What hurt was that he abandoned both me and his mother. Ethan's mother noticed the change almost immediately. "Where's Ethan? Why hasn't he come home?" She wandered the house, looking for him like a lost cat searching for its owner. Despite all I had done for her, her affection was reserved only for Ethan. "He's probably with that other woman. I always knew he wanted to remarry." "You knew about the affair?" "Of course. He told me she was younger and prettier." Her nonchalance stunned me. For years, I thought we were a team bound by the shared experiences of marriage and family. But clearly, Ethan saw our relationship differently. His mother's harsh words and his betrayal left me questioning my worth. Yet a small voice inside reminded me I deserved better. That evening, I reached my breaking point. "I'm done. I can't carry this burden alone anymore." "You're leaving? What about me?" "Your son left you too. I've been holding everything together, but I can't anymore." Her panic was immediate, but my resolve didn't waver. "You can't just abandon me. It's your job as the daughter-in-law." "My job? Since when? You've done nothing but criticize me. You don't even like me." Her indignation turned to desperation. "Oh, wait, let's talk about this." You told me you didn't want me around. I'm giving you what you wanted. I packed my things, ignoring her pleas. I left her with clear instructions for the home aides and contacted the local senior services. As I stepped out the door, she shouted behind me, "You'll regret this!" But her words held no power anymore. A few days later, Ethan called me. "Where are you? Mom says you abandoned her." "I've done more than my fair share. Your mother's care is your responsibility now." "But she needs you." "She needs her son. You've avoided this long enough." Ethan tried guilt-tripping me, but I stood firm. I had spent years sacrificing my happiness, health, and finances for a family that didn't appreciate me. Now, it was my turn to live. I returned to full-time work, rented my own apartment, and began rebuilding my life. The freedom was exhilarating. Weekends were no longer filled with errands or caregiving. I spent my time exploring new hobbies, dining out with friends, and even traveling alone. For the first time in decades, I felt truly alive. Ethan, meanwhile, struggled under the weight of his responsibilities. His mother's demands overwhelmed him, and his once carefree life became a nightmare. The karma was undeniable. As for me, I had no intention of looking back. The chapter with Ethan and his family was finally closed. Ethan's desperate messages became more frequent over the weeks. "Mom's out of control. She won't stop yelling at me. She refuses to bathe without someone's help, and I don't know what to do. Can you just come back and help? I'll even pay you. You should have thought about this before abandoning your family." I didn't respond to his other messages. For years, I had sacrificed everything for people who never valued me. Now, they would have to figure it out on their own. Ethan's life spiraled further into chaos. His mother's hoarding worsened, filling their home with garbage and a foul stench. SOS texts and voicemail after voicemail showed his growing desperation. "Mom won't listen to me. She's making the house unlivable. I can't do this alone." His suffering felt like poetic justice, though I took no joy in it. He had never lifted a finger to help me, yet now expected my assistance when things got tough. My only focus was rebuilding my life. I reconnected with old friends, found joy in small moments, and rediscovered my passions. Meanwhile, Ethan's burdens multiplied. Sarah, our daughter, unexpectedly moved back in with him after learning she was pregnant. She was shocked to find herself sharing the house with her grandmother, whose erratic behavior made living there unbearable. "Dad, you have to do something. Grandma's impossible to live with." Ethan was stuck between caring for his ailing mother and managing Sarah's sudden arrival. Sarah, who had always been spoiled and dependent, demanded that Ethan find a solution. "I'm having a baby. You need to make space for me and the baby." "What do you want me to do?" "Put Grandma in a nursing home." Ethan's efforts to juggle both relationships were futile. Eventually, Sarah became so frustrated that she moved out again, taking her newborn to live with friends. Ethan's girlfriend, meanwhile, had left him after realizing he couldn't provide her with the carefree life she wanted. Now he was entirely alone, facing the consequences of his choices. The weight of caring for his mother became unbearable for him. He eventually sent me one last desperate plea. "I can't handle this anymore. Can we split the cost to put Mom in a facility?" "After everything, you still think I owe you something?" I ignored his message. Ethan had to learn to take responsibility for his actions. I couldn't save him from the life he had created. As for me, my life had blossomed in ways I never imagined. I had moved into a cozy apartment and built a life filled with independence and joy. Weekends were mine again, spent traveling, reading, or simply enjoying the peace of my own company. For years, I thought I had lost myself in my marriage and family, but now I realized I had found something greater: freedom.